You're listening to the Get Out and Surf podcast.
Just like, dude, you get the best barrels ever, dude. Just like, you pull in, and you just get spit
Just
right
paddling out in
of
the big surf, total commitment.
You can't just call time out and stroll on into the beach if you don't like the way things are going.
Occupation?
Surfer.
It turns out that there are still a few places right here on Earth that we haven't fully explored yet.
Is that a job, surfer?
Not really.
And then after that, you just drop in, just ride the barrel and get pitted, so pitted like that.
Hey, this is Joe Walsh bringing you the Get Out and Surf podcast. This is episode 45, and I'm sitting here in the recording booth, back at the brewery, back in Tamarindo, back with my cohorts, Niki Hearn and Patrick McNulty, P-Mac. Welcome back to the show, dude. It's been a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm waking up.
Can you wake up Pat from his nap?
Yeah,
what
I'm
is
just
it?
waking up
Don't
now,
ever
yeah.
wake Pat up from his nap, like, ever.
Don't poke the bear.
Don't poke the bear. They do say, let sleeping dogs lie. So, never wake Pat up from a nap.
Patrick, it's been a few weeks. It's been since episode, I want to say, 38, 39. It's been like 6 or 7 weeks.
It's been a while.
I mean, dude.
It's been a while since we actually had a surf together. I think you guys have been out, and I surfed with you yesterday. Surfed at Casitas with you, but I haven't surfed with Pat in a while.
I know. Yesterday was the first time that, Pat,
A couple days before.
Yeah, I know. It's good to get the boys back together, though.
Yeah. We can argue amongst ourselves in the lineup. That's usually what happens.
Mine.
Yeah, mine.
Hey, so, shoot, I guess what? Last thing was we went to California, then we went to England. You know, you've been holding the fort down. What's been going on here, Tamarindo? Any news?
Yeah, we had a kind of a rainy October, but we still had our die-hard guests coming down here, our
Free room full.
Yeah, we had our guests come down for the free hotel for the months of September and October, which it does get a bit of rain, but if you're in the water surfing, you're wet anyways. And I heard the Rivermouth was actually breaking pretty good a few days in there.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it was, but I'm still thinking back to 5 years ago when it was reeling.
Yeah.
And I never got over that.
I know. Well, you know what? That wave will come back again to the conditions it used to be like. That's what happens. It's sand, man. It keeps moving.
I'm still in denial. I just forget about it. I forget about those times and then just wait for them to come again, because that was when the Rivermouth, I remember that's when I first moved back here, nearly 6 years ago, and I was like, oh, wow, this isn't on my doorstep. It was
world class.
Yeah, that was when it was
When
great.
we get a northwest swell, it was world class.
Yeah, you know what, though? I got to say, I was out on the beach yesterday, and with these offshore winds that have been howling since pretty much the beginning of November, and with a bit of swell that's coming in this weekend, there's waves up and down that beach all the way across the Rivermouth and the estuary on both sides. So I saw quite a few peaks with nobody on any of them. And while that bowling right, that we have those memories of those deep barrels, maybe that's not set up, that sandbar's not doing its thing right now, there's actually pretty good lefts coming in out there, and a couple new waves that don't always break that have popped up. So lots of options for surf, all the way down to Grande, all the way over towards Langosta. I heard further south, Avianos was really good too. And, we've been stoked, man. It's almost like dry season and summer started right on the 1st of November. Like a switch was flipped. And the future's looking great. It's not crowded out there right now. It's going to be busy in a few weeks. But with these offshore winds, you can surf all day. And lots of spots are doing their thing. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I like this.
Right now we've got lots of time to try to sample some of those new surfboards that we've been purchasing.
Okay, so Pat, you were telling me, and I want to hear it here on the podcast, the longboard you're riding now, what is it?
It's a Tyler Jensen Pro from Firewire, and I've always been skeptical of composite boards like that. Like this, it has a wood deck, and it's new technology, and I come from old school, so it was always hard for me to evolve into the new surfboard designs and where they're being built and how they're being built. One thing I did like back in the old days was that a machine got brought into the equation, and you were able to find a board that you liked and have that duplicated without a whole lot of who struck John because of the machine. Well, as time goes on, things have evolved even more, and I moved from a regular fiberglass board to a Von Sol, which I really liked a lot. It had carbon fiber in it and all these newfangled things as I thought it was. And it rode really well. It was light, turned well, it was a good nose rider. And I decided to try the Firewire Taylor Jensen Pro. And I have to say that it's probably the best board I've ever owned in the 54 years that I've been surfing.
That's quite a claim.
That's like a big claim. You know?
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of naysayers out there, a lot of purists, and there's a place for everything.
Yeah.
Like I came up from the old school. I love the old school shapes. They have a real place. There's a real art form associated with it. Many of the retros that you're seeing now, Joe, those are machine made. But the heart of those boards are still there. There's only a handful of guys that are really doing hand shape, and we happen to have one of those people here in Tamarindo, and that's Robert August, who's hand shaping boards.
Okay.
That's an artwork.
Okay, so let's back up 1 second here, because what we're doing is we're actually bringing up a really, really hot topic that has been for years. It's the overseas surfboard debate. You've got all these surfboard shapers, these local shapers from places like Southern California, East Coast U.S., Australia. I mean, all over the world, people have been hand shaping boards for decades. And then, on the other hand, you've got these surfboards that are made overseas, mostly in China, but, there's factories in Thailand, Taiwan. Here in Central America, there are a couple as well that are taking advantage of lower labor costs, lower materials costs to create a surfboard even less, and really to do them on a mass scale. So, of course, you have the purest hand shapers that are, that don't like these China boards. And then you've got these bigger companies or these bigger surf brands that basically are making a lot more money because they're able to produce in bulk and then ship overseas. And so that's kind of the argument. Like, which side of the fence do you stand on? And, I mean, can you stand on both sides of the fence? And I think what you're saying is you can't.
Yeah, absolutely you can. And I think that there's a place for everything. I've watched surfboards evolve from 1965 until today, and I've seen all the new innovations, and every single thing that's come along, with the exception of a couple of things back in the old shortboard era, have helped the industry grow and have helped the industry enable surfers to do things that you wouldn't necessarily ever have dreamt that it would happen. And so it just makes sense that it's evolved to the way it is. And the proof is in the pudding, Joe. Look at who's riding those boards that are coming from Taiwan. Look at who's riding Firewires.
Okay, hold on. I want to play devil's advocate here because I'm riding Firewire boards that I really like, and I've also got hand-shaped boards that I really like. I also have ridden, for example, some Von Sol boards that I really liked that were shaped in Southern California and glassed in Southern California that were very quality boards. And then I've also gotten Von Sol boards that were made overseas that I wasn't as impressed with their glassing or didn't think that the details of the rails were quite as refined. So I want to play the devil's advocate here because I do think there's room for both. But don't you think that when surfboards are being shaped overseas by big companies that bring in, I mean, Kelly Slater owns part of Firewire. They've got Rob Machado as like a poster boy for Firewire as well. So, and Firewire was probably the first overseas brand to sponsor who was the guy in the tour who was riding Firewire before? Dude from Australia, busting huge airs. Can't remember his name.
Taj Burrow?
I think it was Taj Burrow. Okay, so that was back when they were really getting a lot of heat. So now, fast forward a few years, you've got some of the coolest surfers in surfing representing an overseas brand. In my opinion, it seems like that's their way to sort of warm up to the really salty surf crowd and those that are the naysayers. Not to say that the boards aren't quality, because they are. We're riding them. We really like them. You saying that your Tyler Jensen 9.0 is the best board you've ever ridden. And when you look at these boards, they're lightweight. They're really refined. Yes, they're made overseas, but they have characteristics that are akin to the best local shaper in SoCal or Australia. So,
yeah, it's evolution. Take running shoes. Back when I started running marathons in 1976, shoes were just evolving into something that was more comfortable for you to run in. People were running in what they called racing flats back in those days, and it didn't cushion you well. And when the masses decided they were going to start running marathons, the industry started to evolve for shoes that fit the average guy, the regional runner, and the world-class runner. And a lot of research went into that. And now you have running shoes, and a lot of them are manufactured in Asia. And they do that because it's cheaper, because American industry costs too much, and they want to be able to make money and bring the product to the masses. So running shoes have evolved into things that not only enhance your performance, but they protect your body. Surfboards are similar to that. They've evolved into machines that help you to do the things that you dream of doing in the water, whether it's Firewire or whether it's another one of those big name companies. So this is evolution, and I love the classic boards. I own a bunch myself. I hang them on the wall. I have an old Yater spoon that is in pristine condition. I love those boards. Those were my past. But these boards that are coming in now are the future.
But aren't you kind of saying that? I guess I'm a little confused. Why can't we push the evolution of a surfboard forward in our own backyard shaping room? How come? I mean, I would almost think that you'd be quicker to respond to small changes instead of having to. I mean, these larger brands, they're having to produce hundreds or thousands of the same model, same everything in order to make it economically viable before they change any attributes to those boards. They're making whatever, 10,000 baked potatoes or, 5,000 chumlees. Niki?
Yeah, but they're able to reach a lot larger market than, say, your average guy that's making, not average, sorry, but your shapers that are like working out of San Diego. You saw that when we were there. There was no signs above the door. It was Josh Hall looked at his place. It was just like one of those old hangar, just like Bird Shed.
Skip Fry.
There was nothing there. You wouldn't even known it was there. But, when you've got these kind of like larger based companies where, they're able to market reach a lot more people, they're going to be a lot more popular because of that, and the way that they're branded, the way that they're marketed and everything like that. They're just going to have much more of an outreach. And then
I get that. So they're getting a lot more feedback too. That's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah,
a lot more feedback, and they're just able to reach a larger market because they're just global.
Okay.
I grew up with some of the shapers, like Jim Phillips from San Clemente and Encinitas. The guy's a genius. They call him Jim Phillips the Genius. And you've seen his boards, Joe.
Yeah.
And he is a great shaper. You take all these geniuses like him and like some of the other guys that are still doing hand-shaped boards, you take all their collective knowledge, and that's pretty much what a lot of these companies have done. They've taken their collective knowledge and what the industry has done over time with its evolution, and they have begun to produce surfboards that fit a lot of different people and work. And the research is constant. You're not, you don't, like since the time we bought our first batch of Firewire to the next order, they have changed. They're always adjusting. And so it's reality.
It's interesting to see how the industry has progressed, because I know, I would say 10, 15 years ago, so many of the local shapers were really salty because they felt like they were losing market share to all these boards that were being made overseas. And then slowly those overseas factories, the GSI or the Cobra factory or Surf Tech, Boardworks, they brought in shapers, like you're saying, and those shapers brought their intellect, their creative genius with them, and they did a line, like Robert August had a line of longboards with Surf Tech, and so did so many other, Ben Ipa and Takayama, and so basically it shifted to giving royalties to each of these shapers for every board that was sold by these large companies. I guess I'm just looking at the future based off of what's happened in the past. I'm trying to get a gauge for how it's going. So I see the positive sides of producing overseas as far as the cost being less. But then I hear these arguments, especially from the local shapers in places like Southern California, that say things like, they use worse materials or child labor. Now, I can't speak about the child labor because I haven't seen these factories, and I don't know about the materials, but let's be honest, surfboards is not very environmentally friendly no matter where you're making them. Right?
No, I think like big industry, that's where their responsibility lies, where they've got to like push to have more sustainable boards or more recyclable materials, more eco-friendly, because they're obviously their footprint is large because they produce so much. But I think that's where their responsibility lies, to push and progress into having, they're now doing Firewire, now doing using wool.
Yeah.
In one of the we saw a bunch in Bird's Surf Shed. And, again, it's looking for these more sustainable materials to use. I think I can sit on both sides of the fence quite happily. In my quiver, I've got a local shaped longboard. I have a old Surf Tech Hogfish that I've had that thing for, nearly 17 years or something like that now. And it's still, my wife's literally going to Grande right now to go and surf it.
Yeah.
And I'm quite happy to sit on both sides. We were in England. First session at Fistral, I rode that Dewey Weber. And then the second session, I went out on my 5.9, Evo.
Okay.
And enjoyed both sessions, equally.
So what you were saying earlier, basically these larger companies, these big surfboard manufacturers, they have the ability to either have a large negative footprint or positive footprint, however you look at it. And sort of the same way as saying getting that feedback, because they are producing so many boards, if they can become more environmentally minded, they actually could make a much more positive impact with the surfing industry and all the boards they're producing, because quite honestly, surfboards are petroleum-based products and they're not very sustainable. And
that's a finite resource, and one point it's not going to be there. So,
yeah, but
it's one of those things. And like I say, I can understand why local shapers find it a little harder to keep up with industry, because they've got limited resource and limited funds than these other large companies have. But I'm still wanting to get I'm going to get a Robert August longboard soon. I still want to go to San Diego and go get a skip fry egg. But also, whenever we get a new batch of new Firewires, I'm in there straight away like a kid in a candy store going like, oh, this one, you pick it up. And so I think there's room for both. And I think as a consumer, you can vote with your wallet as such. You can go both ways.
Yeah.
The guys that are in their backyards shaping are the companies that are still hand shaping stuff, or even using machines and then touching them up and putting their special blend of glass and color on them. And those guys are artists. And if surfing is an individual sport, and if what brings you into the industry is that artwork, and that's what makes you feel good about surfing, and that matches what you think about the world, then have at it.
Support your local shaper.
I support you 100%. We all support our local shapers. We all have multiple boards.
Mm-hmm.
We all use multiple boards for multiple reasons. I have a 7.6 Robert August What I Ride that's shaped exactly like the longboard with 3 fins on it, and it surfs like unreal. And it's a glass board, and it was hand shaped, and it's a great board. One thing I do know, that you never know what you get when you get a hand shaped board. I may try to replicate that, and it may not work. One thing about machines and one thing about technology is you can replicate that surfboard down to the finite millimeters.
You really can.
So
so that would be definitely a pro, I would say.
Yeah, I have friends that are surfboard shapers. I love the fact that they're doing it, and they're making some money, not a lot of money, and it's hard to compete. It always was hard to compete. There never was a lot of money in surfboards.
No, because surfers are just cheapskates. They always want a bro deal. Everybody wants to be sponsored, right? Everybody's trying to get a hookup from the local shaper. And we're talking about something that takes hours and hours to produce a single board. And that's after thousands and thousands of hours of experience learning how to shape a board correctly, how to build a board. It is art, and they're artificially cheap. The price of a surfboard is much less than it really should be when you think about the man hours that goes into making them. And it's because so many surfers are making boards and there's so much competition, you simply can't get that $2,000 a board unless you are really smart with your marketing and you've got a really cool brand and you're really doing something unique. But the reality is you can go into a local shop in San Diego, Southern California, where there is some of the most amazing surfboards being hand shaped, and you can pick up a board for under $1,000, 600, 800, that price range, and you can't charge anymore because you're competing also with these brands that are producing boards overseas where they're so inexpensive that it's keeping the price.
Yeah, my advice to anyone that's going to go to their local shaper, somebody that they really like, an artist, buy two. Surf with one and put the other one on your wall, because that's a piece of art. And that's a collector's item. When I buy from here on in a hand-shaped board, it's going on my wall. My Robert August, the next one I buy from him is going on my wall. The next Jim Phillips I buy is going on my wall, because they are pieces of art.
Yeah.
And I respect that 100%. But if you're surfing all the time, it's nice to try other stuff. I'm saying that the surfboard I am now using from Firewire is one of the best, if not the best, longboard and most maneuverable that I've ever ridden. And I can't help but acknowledge that.
There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's great. I mean, I think that you probably wouldn't put it on your wall though, because you could go get another one the exact same, right?
Yeah, it's not necessary. It's beautiful. They're beautiful. They're mass produced, but it's not really artwork like the artwork that's being produced in the back garages, or some of the fishes that we're seeing that are made out of balsa, and all that handcrafted stuff that's going on. That's artwork, and if that's what floats your boat and knock yourself out, I respect it 100%, because I've seen it evolve.
Yeah, I look at it. The kind of like stuff that's mass produced is equipment, like sports equipment, if you know what I mean. Like you go and just pick up any type of equipment, and it's a tool. It allows me to surf and stuff like that. The other stuff is a real piece of craft that someone has like really, really put a lot of man hours. And I still think progression and the industry still needs those backyard shapers, because that is where real time and energy, and they don't think about the deadline, they don't think about the bottom line. I know they've got to pay the bills, but it's a different type of thing. So they're really able to immerse themselves and put a lot of their own style and energy and into that surfboard they're making. So again, I still think progression will come from those backyard shapers.
Yeah, I would be totally devastated if backyard shapers disappeared and was replaced by just a handful of large multinational companies that did nothing but pump out boards from some faraway place. That would be the death of part of the surf culture. And so I don't think it will ever happen either, because there are so many surfers that are such purists.
I agree with you. I don't think, because there's always going to be someone who's going to be in their backyard going, I'm going to tinker with this, and you know what I mean, they're always going to be like, that's the thing, that's the nature of people like the Takeyamas and Simmons and all these guys. They're the ones that came up with all of these different types of designs and materials and idea of using this with this, and it's just the larger industry is fed off that. The larger industry would not be here if it was not for those first backyard shapers.
The surfing industry from the 60s up until now, you go to a trade show and you see these old guys that were doing these things back in those days. They were pioneers.
Oh, yeah.
And what they did helped the next breakthrough, and then the next breakthrough, and then the next breakthrough. And we're able to trace this evolution to today. And it's the collectiveness of everything that we've done in surfing that has brought us to where we are right now. And it's nice that we still have people that are out there doing hand shapes. And I love those guys. Don't get me wrong when I'm saying that the best board I've ridden ever is a Firewire. I want to surf on a surfboard because I'm a longboarder. I want to be able to surf on a surfboard that'll take me out in a 2-foot day and a 12-foot day. And this surfboard will do that. So that's what I'm looking for. I probably could get the same thing if I had somebody craft it for me. But I'm not a genius when it comes to those kinds of things. And it's very rare that you all of a sudden stumble upon something. And there's only been a few surfboards in my life that I've stumbled upon where I've said, wow, this is kind of like it. And this is one of them. So there you go.
That's why in surfing's such a, you'll never stop progression, and it's always going to evolve. And, you know, for what people are calling for now, like, you know, these lighter weight boards, you know, there's a lot more sort of like aerial type, much more skater type of maneuvers being well, like, you know, younger people using those type of maneuvers instead of like long fluid lines. So the construction has to change. Boards have to be lightweight, you know. And, you know, through the 90s, was it Rob Machado said, like, most people were riding the wrong type of board. And now it's just opened up, you know, it's huge now. There's so many different styles for how you want to surf. Everyone surfed, you know, Pat's a longboarder, but he's also quite progressive in the way that he surfs as well. You know, he's not just like cruising down a line and hanging 5 or hanging 10. He's hitting the lip and stuff like that, and he wants a board that can do that. And if you've got, you know, you're riding, not now, what board are you riding now?
5'7" baked potato.
Yeah, 5'7", and you're a tall guy.
Yeah, well, it's got a bit of volume.
Absolutely, but beforehand, you would never thought, if I'm riding a 5'7", you know, thruster that was always available, or a little fish, you wouldn't have had that volume, and you wouldn't be able to kind of like, you know, crank the turns that you are now. And that's, you know, that's where the industry is being able to give much more option to all us surfers.
You're making it sound like you can only get like old school beefier boards if they're hand shaped here in the US or your local shaper, and you're only going to get these lightweight high performance boards overseas. And that's totally not true, because there are heavy bulky boards overseas, and those lightweight firewires that are being built overseas are forcing local shapers to compete by using the same techniques like vacuum bagging when they're glassing a board to, you know, use as little resin as possible to make as lightweight of a board as possible. So really, I think the argument isn't like necessarily the type of board you're going to ultimately be like find. It's really where it's being produced. And you've got local shapers arguing that when you buy a board from overseas, you're helping contribute to a negative environmental footprint, that you're not supporting local shapers, and that the carbon footprint in general, things being shaped far away, then shipped, then, you know, like when a big industry starts producing products, they're warehousing it here, shipping it here, distributing it here. There's a big footprint. I can see some of the environmental stuff, but then I also know that surfboards aren't very environmentally friendly. So that's kind of a weird argument. The other part about that we talked about, supporting your local shaper, I think that's important. I think you can buy overseas boards and you can support your local shaper, and you should do both. And you would put that local shaper's board on your wall. That is a piece of art that dude right there built, and that's cool. Some of the other arguments, though, they're just, I think they come from the fact that the surfing industry has, especially in the last 20 years, it's grown so much, and there's a lot of big players trying to make as much money in it. It's sort of changed the soul of the sport. I started noticing it at the surf expos when all of the surfboard shapers were disappearing, and all of a sudden it was a bunch of stand-up boards, like 30 stand-up paddleboard brands and maybe 5 surfboard brands. That's what a surf expo is these days. You have to go to the boardroom show in San Diego once a year to actually see like the like local shapers and the future of handcrafted surfboards. So I mean, you look at all these large hedge funds that you know, like Billabong and Quicksilver, that's the same company now. Hurley sold to some international like just investment group. You've got even Firewire, it's owned by a hedge fund. I mean, this is millions and millions of dollars. It's big business, and that's like, I think at the end of the day, that's what the local shaper or the purist is fighting against or arguing against, because I think that's what's happening. You go to a place like England, we just went there. They don't make a lot of surfboards in England. They're importing a lot of boards from California, from other parts of the world that are making high-end surfboards, and they're riding old school classic logs there. That's like the popular board to ride in England. I didn't realize that.
There is people in England that are shaping good boards.
I'm not saying that there's not. I'm just saying that there's a huge surfing community that is underserved, and it is looking for quality boards. They value a hand-shaped longboard or shortboard by a well-known shaper, and they're willing to pay 3 times as much for that board as surfers in California are. And I think that right there was an eye-opening observation, and I really like that fact. That's showing that surfers in England are willing to invest.
There's a market for everything, Joe.
It just shows me that the surfers in England, a lot of them are valuing that hand-shaped art. And that, I think, is the movement that will continue to grow. Perhaps it'll take longer in the U.S. I don't know why it would. Maybe we're so spoiled coming from places like California or the East Coast where there's so many shapers that prices are artificially low that you just kind of assume, like, if you feel like if you paid like $800 for a board, you're like, man, I didn't get a good deal. I paid market price. But really, that's like some dude spent years of his life learning that craft and spent hours and hours building that board. And it's,
But it's like, you remember what Adam said when we were over there. In the beginning, good, decent materials are really hard to come by in England. So there's a lot of these shapers, but, they're putting all this time and effort into a board, but then the board wasn't lasting. The materials weren't as good quality as you can get in California or, say, from Australia. Now that has opened up where you can start getting these better quality materials. And that is where you've now got these shapers that are in England, and I imagine over Europe as well, are just, making really good craft.
Yeah.
And God bless them.
Okay, so getting back to Firewire, because really when you talk about Firewire, they're probably the biggest surfboard brand that is producing boards overseas. There's lots of other surfboards being produced overseas. Surf Tech makes their boards overseas. You've got a ton of, like, from Channel Islands through...
Torque.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, NSP, all those foam boards, all of that stuff's coming from overseas. So, I'll tell you a couple reasons why I really like Firewire. And I mean, I love the local shaper, and I'm sitting here talking about all the reasons why you need to buy local boards. But when it comes to these overseas boards, and I'm going to focus on Firewire because I think they're doing it the best. Number one, they last a really long time. And to me, in an industry that full of environmental hippies, we're riding these boards which are not so environmentally friendly. So a surfboard that lasts 2 or 3 times as long is better for the planet. And also the fact that they're moving towards more environmentally friendly construction methods and materials. Glassing boards with wool. Their whole, the whole mantra at that brand is moving towards more eco-sustainable surfboards. And the second, I really like the fact that, you like your 9.0 Tyler Jensen, you could travel to the other side of the world, pick up the same board, same dimensions. It's going to ride the same way. You're saying that, machine built and highly refined product, it's going to be, negligible difference. It's going to be very, very, very similar. And I think that's something that you can't really replicate with hand-shaped boards. It's really hard, right? Maybe a little bit easier if they were shaped on a CNC machine and then hand-finished, but even still. The glassing is where all that weight comes in, and if it's not glassed the exact same way, and you're going to have differences. If the fins aren't set the exact same spot, you're going to have differences. And probably another reason why I like Firewire would be the fact that Kelly Slater does own part of that company. And, if you want to believe in a surfer, he's like the Tom Brady of surfing, that guy. In fact, that the Olympics are coming up with surfing, 2020 Olympics. Surfing's going to be in it. There's one spot right now remaining. I think Chloe Andino earned a spot. And there's only one more male surf spot. And you only get 2 men, 2 women for each country. And it's going to come down to that pipeline contest. Because I think John Florence is in line for that second spot. But if Slater beats John in that contest, then he will actually win enough points and be able to secure that second spot. And I don't know. I know we're jumping to the Olympics, but we're talking about Slater. The dude's magic. And if he was going to pull it off, if he wants to surf in the Olympics, he will find a way, and that will be the contest where we'll do it. And look at his wave pool, look at his investment in Firewire and the direction. Those boards really are top line. They really are, and I believe they're going to continue because you've got someone involved who's, the epitome of surfing. That guy.
Dude's a legend. He's the absolute GOAT. You know what I mean? If I was, come on, John, just be like, yeah, go on.
Yeah, he deserves it.
He's not going to do another Olympics. It's another 4 years after this.
Dude,
so
Slater's 47.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, and he puts a lot of these younger guys to shame. He really is a very, very good surfer, and his longevity in the sport is just unbelievable.
How many 47-year-olds are there that go and compete in the Olympics?
Yeah,
anyways,
and won world championship 11 times in your sport.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. But I think that those are some obviously solid reasons why you would support a brand like Firewire, and we do at the Surf Camp. We carry them. We're going to be carrying even more this season, and it's because they're quality boards. They do last a long time. They're built very well, and I mean we've enjoyed riding them. So
Yeah, and I think it's the most excited I've seen our guests when we start unveiling the new quivers that come out, or the new types of boards that they see the Firewire logo and they really get excited about it.
yeah.
Yeah, so we know by doing this podcast and having this conversation, there's going to be some people that agree with us and some people that disagree with us. We welcome your input.
Yeah, send us an
Send
email.
us a line. We'll put you on the next podcast with what you wrote, good or bad, and get out and surf.
It's an ongoing debate. It's not going to end right here, right now. It's going to go on forever and ever, I'm sure. Email us, getoutandsurfcr@gmail.com. And, hey, do we have any shout-outs? Episode 45.
Yeah, well, I do have a shout out to Mum and Dad. It's their 45th wedding anniversary, so quite serendipitous. It's episode 45, so congratulations, Mum and Dad. 45, I hope, happy years of marriage.
That's rad. They're actually listening to the podcast, huh?
Well, yeah, there will be.
Will they?
Nah, I doubt it. I very much doubt it. I'm being over positive there. No, they don't even know what a computer is. I go home like maybe once a year, and my mum then gets me to come in, and she's like, "There's a thing on the television that I haven't been able to get rid of because she's touched something on a remote controller," and so then you get in and you have to, reprogram a television because like that. So podcast, no, I doubt it.
My parents watched the TV with the closed captioning words on top. They couldn't get rid of it until I went up there to take it off, and it was like they were so grateful. It's like I love you, Mom and Dad.
Yeah, I want to shout out to a couple of guys I met this latest trip. They came from New York. It's Brant and Doug. They work for a company that represents a lot of the major music groups, including Metallica and Red Hot Chili Peppers. And they were down this week, and they had a great time. And this shout out to them, and we hope they come back.
Yeah. So when are they coming back? When's Metallica going to be on the show? That's what I want to know. Kirk
Well,
Hammett's a big
that's
server.
you got to work that out.
I'm working on Gary Busey. Come on, I can only do one celebrity at a time.
Yeah. So Gary Busey, if you're listening to this podcast, we want to talk to you.
Yeah, we want to have a big Wednesday movie screening and a big Wednesday party here at Witches Rock, and all we need is Gary Busey.
The masochist.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Well,
Yeah, so anyway, the other shout out I have is to my son, Patrick, who is in Manhattan working in a 911 ambulance. He's probably scooping up guts in the gutter right now, but this shout out to you.
And I got one more last shout out to Amir Aliabadi, who's a multi-return guest at Witches Rock, and he listens to the show a lot.
A dedicated fan.
He's a dedicated fan. And he sent us a question. He asked if we play the True Surf video game, and if so, what level are we on? I thought that was kind of I don't play video games. But then when I was flying back from England, I was in the airport, and I was like, I'm going to download the game. Dude, the game's rad. I'm on level 12, Amir. Almost on 13. And if you haven't downloaded it and put it on your phone, it is the most realistic surfing game I've ever played. It was so cool, and I didn't realize this until I've been playing it for, I don't know, I guess the last couple of weeks. I showed my son Happy, and then my daughter Ruby. She's not even 4 yet. She's playing it. She's a natural at it. It's crazy, but they've got all these spots around the world, like from Cloudbreak to Hossiger to Trestles to Jaws, etc., etc. And the waves in the video game are the same height and conditions as what the spots are in real life. So if it's like 15 foot at Pipeline, it's 15 foot in the video game. And if it's like flat at Pipe, then it's flat in the video game. And I just thought that was really interesting how they're bringing in things like, oh, and you can surf in like contests with other dudes playing the game, and you can buy better boards. And dude, I'm a little bit, I wouldn't seem addicted because I don't play a lot of games, but now, you know what? I am a fan. So shout out, Amir. Thanks for asking. You got me turned on to something pretty cool, and
I haven't tried it yet, so I'm on level 0. Maybe I'll give it a look.
I don't know, you're anti-tech, not by choice, but just...
No, just seems to be the way that I'm wired.
Well, you'll probably get into it, man. It's pretty sweet. All right, cool. Let's have a good rest of the weekend. Watch some football. Thanks for listening to the Get Out and Surf podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Witches Rock Surf Camp, located beachfront in Tamarindo, Costa Rica. If you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to the show. You can do that on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. And if you like the show, give us a review on iTunes. That would be great. That's it. We'll see you next week, same place, same time, with another episode of Get Out and Surf. Pura vida y nos vemos.